Mom, Uncle, my study abroad application has been approved. I've decided to go overseas. In the quiet living room, Teresa's voice was soft and light, like a drop of water falling into a pool. Across the sofa, Teresa's mom was overjoyed. It got approved so quickly. When are you leaving? In 10 days. Teresa's mom didn't expect it to be so rushed. Amidst the excitement, a trace of reluctance surfaced in her eyes. Then Mom will go pack your luggage now. It's your first time traveling far, and to a foreign country at that. I really can't rest easy, so I contacted a friend from a few years ago. Coincidentally, her son is also in London. If anything comes up, just reach out to him. Don't worry about being a bother. After all, you and that boy were betrothed as children. See if you two click. If you do, great. If not, just be friends. Teresa nodded. Okay, Mom. Hearing this, Teresa's mom was utterly surprised. Teresa, you agreed. You and that ex-boyfriend of yours finally broke up. Teresa fell silent instantly. Payne's father instantly understood something and slammed the table abruptly. He's been refusing to come back with you to meet us. Clearly not serious about you. A boyfriend like that. Good riddance. Boyfriend. What boyfriend? A voice suddenly shattered the stifling atmosphere in the living room. The three turned their heads at the sound and saw Payne pushing the door open at that very moment. He was dressed in a black shirt and black trousers. His figure as elegant as jade and as straight as a pine tree, exuding an air of lazy nobility in every movement. Teresa shivered slightly and stood up to call out, "Brother." Payne responded with a meaningful, tossed the car keys aside, and went upstairs. In the evening, Teresa's mom prepared a large table of dishes and even opened a bottle of red wine. She raised her glass, smiling warmly at her three family members, ready to announce the good news. Come on, let's celebrate properly as a family today. To celebrate that Teresa is about to. Teresa sensed something was off and quickly interrupted her. Mom, this wine tastes a bit bitter. Has it expired? Has it expired? Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Teresa's mom looked puzzled. It clearly hadn't expired. But Teresa had already pulled her into the kitchen under the pretext of fetching a new bottle. Mom, don't tell my brother about me going abroad yet. At first, Teresa's mom found it a bit strange, but recalling how her stepson had always taken care of her daughter, she gradually understood the inseparable bond between the siblings and nodded in agreement. After hastily eating a few bites, Teresa got up and returned to her room. After washing up, she lay in bed and slowly drifted off to sleep. Until midnight, right on time, another person appeared by her side. A scorching breath fell on her neck, and the next second, soft lips pressed against it, gently nibbling, the cool dampness completely rousing the drowsy Teresa. Her body stiffened, and she instinctively pushed him away with a sudden movement. Her voice urgent and resistant. Payne, what? Now that your family wants to set you up with a boyfriend, you won't let me touch you anymore. In the darkness, Payne curled his lips, but the smile didn't reach his eyes, his voice dripping with laziness. After all these years together, you think you can just walk away scot-free? Teresa knew he had misunderstood but didn't explain. In the endless silence, Payne's expression turned cold. He pulled her into his arms. Teresa, have I ever told you? You're not allowed to have a boyfriend. You belong to me. Feeling the scorching heat emanating from behind her, Teresa didn't want to argue with him, so she lied. It's that time of the month. I'm not feeling well. Hearing her yielding explanation, Payne's expression softened slightly, though he couldn't help but frown. Didn't your period just end not long ago? It's back already. Fine. I won't touch you tonight. Get some rest. With that, he pulled her tightly into his embrace, listening to the steady and peaceful breathing beside her. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep. No one knew that her boyfriend was actually her brother, Payne. At 12, her mother remarried into the Quinton family, and she became step-siblings with Quinton family's only son, Payne. At 14, she called him brother, and he called her sister. To outsiders, they appeared as the picture of sibling harmony. At 18, her secret crush diary filled with his name was discovered. He leaned lazily against her desk, reading the diary over and over with a smile in his eyes, then caught her hand as she tried to snatch it back and planted a kiss on her blushing cheek. At 20, they tasted the forbidden fruit for the first time, and from then on, they couldn't get enough. spiraling out of control. By day, they were siblings. But at night, they secretly entangled themselves in a deadly embrace, hiding it from everyone. Teresa had always been a good girl since childhood, and being with Payne was the only outrageous thing she had ever done in her life. She liked Payne so much that she even thought it wouldn't matter if their relationship remained a secret forever. They could just sneak off to get married abroad when the time came. But all these delusions came to an abrupt halt half a month ago when she overheard his conversation with his friends. It was pouring rain that day when she ran to bring Payne an umbrella. Just as she was about to open the private room door, she heard his friend's voice. "Payne, what are you going to do about your stepmother's daughter? Didn't you say you'd dump her after having some fun? Why haven't you broken up yet?" "Yeah, didn't you get together with her just to get back at her mom for marrying into the Quinton family? Don't tell me you've gone soft." Revenge. He was with her not because he liked her, but for revenge. Teresa's face turned completely pale, her mind buzzed, and her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. Yet she stubbornly refused to leave, wanting to hear Payne's response. Until the next second, Payne's cold and cruel words reached her ears one by one. "If we don't play longer, how can we make her suffer more?" At that moment, the entire room burst into laughter, while she stood outside the door, feeling as if she had fallen into an icy abyss. So he never liked her, being with her, calling her his girlfriend, and sharing intimate nights together. It was all just revenge for his mother's position being taken by hers. Mom still has to stay and live at the Quinton family's house, so she couldn't let this matter become a public scandal. After much deliberation, the only solution she could think of was to escape, to leave this home and him behind. So she applied to study abroad. Now, only 10 days remain until her silent departure. Looking at the countdown reminder on her phone, Teresa raised her hand and pulled Payne's arm away from her waist. Within minutes, he hugged her again, and as soon as she pulled away, he unconsciously embraced her once more. Her patience wore thin with each back and forth, so she simply grabbed a pillow and placed it between them. This time, he finally settled down. Teresa finally had some peace. She knew that a full stop would soon be drawn between them. She no longer belonged to him, nor was she his possession anymore. At exactly 8 in the morning, the alarm clocked Teresa from her dream. She opened her eyes and saw that there was no one beside her. Afraid of being discovered by their parents, they agreed that Payne would come every night at midnight and leave promptly at 5 a.m. They lived like this for a full 5 years. But soon, they were just siblings, and he no longer had to sneak around. After changing her clothes, she went downstairs and immediately spotted the unfamiliar woman sitting on the sofa. Teresa's mom waved enthusiastically at her, calling her over and warmly introducing, "Teresa, come quickly. This is your brother's girlfriend. Go pour some water for our guest." Vicky stood up cooperatively, reaching out her hand with a smile that curved her eyes. "You must be Payne's sister. Nice to meet you. Although it's our first time meeting, I've often heard your brother praise you." Teresa's palm trembled slightly as she glanced at Payne, but she asked nothing and turned to pour her a glass of water. After pouring a cup of hot water, just as she was about to carry it out, Payne walked in. He wrapped his arm around her waist, leaned down, and was about to kiss her. Teresa quickly turned her head away to avoid it. "Stop fooling around. Your girlfriend is outside." Payne raised an eyebrow and pecked her lips. "Are you angry? Forgot to tell you. She's just my childhood friend who went abroad very young and just returned a couple of days ago. The old man is pushing me to get married, so to avoid him playing matchmaker randomly, I brought her here to put on a show. Who my girlfriend is, you should know best." "Right. Teresa listened quietly for a long while, showing no expression, and casually nodded in response. Seeing her indifferent demeanor, Payne flashed a hint of surprise in his eyes. He had thought it would take a long time to coax her again this time. After all, in the past, when a young girl gave him a love letter, she would become so jealous upon seeing it that she cried until her eyes were swollen shut. He found out and went to ask her, but she refused to say anything, forcing him to try every means just to coax out a word or two of truth. It turned out she believed their forbidden love was unacceptable to the world, and she could never openly stand by his side as his girlfriend. So she never dared to confront him or lose her temper, only sulking alone under the covers. This time, it was the same old story, yet her reaction was unusually calm. This couldn't help but make Payne feel suspicious in his heart. Just as he was about to ask, Teresa didn't give him a chance to speak. taking her water cup and leaving. After breakfast was ready, the family sat down as usual. Vicky was seated beside Payne. The two chatted and laughed about childhood memories, appearing utterly close and intimate. Vicky had spent a few years abroad and loved eating runny fried eggs. Payne, upon learning this, picked up the fried egg from his bowl and placed it in hers. She immediately blushed with a girlish shyness and offered him the fried egg she had taken a bite from. Placing it in his bowl, Payne couldn't help but glance at Teresa. She kept her head down, focused on eating her porridge, seemingly oblivious to what had just happened. When she looked up to grab a tissue, he picked up the egg and took a bite. Teresa happened to glance over, silently put down her spoon, and left the table. Seeing her movement as if she was about to leave, Vicky quickly called out to her, "Teresa, are you going out? Payne and I are also heading out for a date." "Wait a moment, we can go together." Teresa was about to refuse when Payne's father spoke up. "It's raining outside. Let your brother take you. Otherwise, your mother and I won't feel at ease." With her uncle having spoken, Teresa couldn't refuse and had no choice but to head to the garage first. She was going to the visa office. Wouldn't this mean Payne would find out about her plans to go abroad? After much deliberation, she couldn't think of any other solution, so she simply gave up. If he knew, then so be it. The plans were already set, and there was nothing he could do about it. Before long, the two latecomers finally boarded the car. Vicky unusually took a seat in the back and deliberately struck up a conversation with Teresa. She wasn't in the mood and responded perfunctorily with a few words. The car slowly drove away as the sound of rain gradually became clearer. Vicky leaned close to her ear, deliberately lowering her voice. "I know you don't like me, and I know your relationship with Payne isn't just an ordinary sibling bond. But you two can never have a future together. Payne isn't completely indifferent to me either. Believe it or not, if I wanted to, I could take him away from you." Teresa felt a slight tremor in her heart and turned to glance at Vicky, only to see her provocatively pull out her phone and set an alarm. A minute later, the alarm rang right on time. She pretended to answer a call and within seconds managed to squeeze out a few tears. Looking tearfully toward the front seat, "Payne, the butler called saying my puppy is sick. I'm really worried. Could you take me home now?" Payne pulled over to the side of the road, gazing at the relentless rain outside the window before frowning and turning his head back. But the moment he saw her tear-streaked face, he hesitated for a few seconds before shifting his gaze to Teresa. "I'm taking Vicky to the west side of the city now. It's not on the way, so you should get out and take a taxi." Vicky, afraid she might refuse, quickly handed her an umbrella. Teresa's gaze shifted between the two people, but in the end, she said nothing and opened the car door. Raindrops seeped through the umbrella's torn holes, quickly soaking her completely. The rain was pouring heavily, making it impossible for her to hail a taxi, so she had to hold her bag over her head and dash forward. After running for a full half hour, she finally arrived at the visa office, drenched and disheveled. After getting the visa sorted, she still couldn't hail a taxi. Teresa had no choice but to walk home in the rain for another hour. As soon as she got home, she felt feverish, extremely uncomfortable all over, and collapsed onto the bed in a daze. She had some bizarre nightmares, constantly breaking out in cold sweat, feeling as if monsters were chasing after her. When she mustered the strength to open her eyes, she realized the monster was Payne. He held her in his arms, feeding her medicine spoon by spoon, his gentle tone tinged with a hint of heartache. "Be good, take the medicine, and you'll feel better soon." Teresa couldn't tell whether she was in reality or in a dream. She swallowed a few sips of the medicine and drifted back into a hazy sleep. By the time she woke again, the fever had subsided. She instinctively glanced to her side. Not a soul in sight. Only a phone on the nightstand kept vibrating incessantly. She picked it up and opened it, only to find a group of buddies in the group chat tagging Payne. "Payne, your acting skills are simply top-notch. Hearing that your little sister was sick, you dropped a project worth hundreds of millions just to go back and take care of her. Why do I feel like Payne is genuinely serious this time? Rushing through over 20 red lights to get home after hearing she had a fever. Could it be he's actually fallen for that little girl? Same here. I think so too. Being that anxious doesn't seem like acting." At the bottom of the messages, Payne only replied with one line. "Like her, not unless I die. I'm just making sure the act is thorough, so she'll be even more devoted. That way, when the truth comes out, she'll be even more heartbroken, won't she?" Word by word, It made Teresa tremble deep in her heart. 5 years of companionship, only to be met with the words, "I'll only like her over my dead body." Pain, you truly have no heart. She felt nothing but an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, her hand dropping limply. The next second, the bedroom door was pushed open, carrying a cup of hot water. Payne stepped in and, upon seeing this scene, his expression changed slightly as he quickly strode forward to snatch the phone away. That usually carefree voice carried a barely detectable tension. "What did you see?" Teresa lowered her head, hiding her slightly reddened eyes, and spoke hoarsely. "Is there anything I shouldn't see?" She couldn't understand, since he was fully aware that her feelings for him had reached an uncontrollable point. Why wouldn't he stop? Was it really necessary to drag this act out for so long? Still having to be on guard, afraid she might find out. Doesn't it get exhausting, pretending with fake affection for this long? Enough. His goal has been achieved. She is already in unbearable agony. Payne was unaware of her thoughts, simply assuming she was in a bad mood due to illness. He quickly embraced her to comfort her. "How could that be? I was just preparing a surprise for you and didn't want you to know. Since you're upset, I'll tell you in advance." "Okay. I found out that Denmark allows marriage between unrelated siblings. Teresa, let's immigrate there in the future and get married." "Okay. I've already started making the arrangements." Such words had been exchanged countless times between them during many late nights before. Hearing it again now, Teresa felt no stirring emotions in her heart, only a deathly calm like a stagnant pool. She knew there would be no future between them. 10 days later, Payne would no longer have Teresa in his life, and the same was true for her. After recovering from her illness, Teresa's first task was to compile all the expenses the Quinton family had spent on her over the years. Holding the card, she sat at the table and listed all the expenses incurred during her 10 years living with the Quinton family. From tuition fees to various living expenses, the total amounted to 30 million. The inheritance left by her father and the old family home combined were worth over 20 million. And through years of diligent work study, she had saved up quite a bit. In the end, she was still short by a little over 100,000 in her bank account. It seemed that before leaving, she would need to find some work to make up the remaining amount. Teresa was studying photography, and with this in mind, she posted photography service listings online. Soon, 7 or 8 customers came to her, booking services ranging from wedding photos to graduation portraits. She took on everything without complaint, working from dawn till dusk every day until she was so exhausted she could barely straighten her back. Because her mother had told her that uncle had already been divorced before he met her, but it was never publicly disclosed. From beginning to end, Mom and Uncle were in a normal relationship that led to marriage. There was never any affair involved. Neither she nor her mother had ever coveted the Quinton family's wealth. She was planning to leave, but she didn't want Payne to continue misunderstanding and leaving Mom at the Quinton household. That's why she decided to pay off all this money. After working hard for 5 or 6 days, Teresa had only managed to save up a little over $30,000. Just as she was growing anxious about the slow progress, a big order suddenly came in. An employer contacted her, asking her to help take a set of birthday photos at a birthday banquet, with a payment of $200,000. Behind this generous reward, there was also a corresponding price to pay. The employer said the owner of the photos was very picky, and only if she was completely satisfied would the corresponding price be paid. To raise the money as soon as possible, Teresa agreed without hesitation. On the day of the banquet, she rushed over with her camera bag only to realize they were acquaintances. Seeing Vicky in a princess dress and crown, and Payne in a black suit beside her, her heart trembled violently. Noticing her exhausted face, Payne frowned. "Why did you take this job? Isn't your dream to become a top photographer? Didn't your family give you living expenses?" "I'm an adult. I took the job because I enjoy the work." Hearing this, Payne's face suddenly turned colder. Just as he was about to reprimand her, Vicky quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Teresa, Payne is just concerned about you and worried you might get tired. Please don't say things like that to upset your brother." As she spoke, Vicky even took her hand and led her into the venue, saying she wanted to see her photography skills. Though the words were polite, throughout the entire evening, Teresa didn't get a single minute of rest, clicking the camera so much it nearly sparked. After taking a full 4,000 to 5,000 photos, Vicky still wasn't satisfied and insisted she drag her exhausted body to take aerial shots. She carried dozens of pounds of photography equipment on her back, climbed to the third floor, set up the tripod, and aimed it at the center of the stage. Through the lens, Payne stepped onto the stage amidst a chorus of teasing, and personally placed the necklace, said to be a Quinton family heirloom, around Vicky's neck. She flashed a triumphant smile, deliberately glanced toward the third floor, then threw herself into his arms. Teresa knew that Vicky was deliberately putting on a show for her. That evening, she clung to Payne, sparing no effort to flaunt their affection in front of Teresa. She would feed him sips of her champagne, asking him to taste it, pull him into a dance, sparking guest speculation about an impending engagement, or whisper coquettishly that her legs ached, demanding a massage. Such intimate photos were everywhere, filling several memory cards to the brim. Teresa had grown numb. She quickly pressed the shutter button as she watched the two embrace. Just as the first shot was taken and the second was about to be pressed, Vicky stood on tiptoe and kissed Payne. Teresa's hand froze. Those numb eyes briefly regained clarity for a moment, focusing on the lens. In the high-definition footage, Payne was also stunned, but just 3 seconds later, he reached out and pulled Vicky into his arms, while cupping the back of her head, deepening what had started as a tentative kiss. Oh my. The young couple seems quite affectionate, judging by the looks of it. Good news is coming soon. I'll be able to drink to my son's wedding celebration in no time. Ha 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 ha. Hearing the voice of Payne's father from behind, Teresa finally snapped out of it. She quickly raised her hand and snapped a few photos, clearly capturing the most grand and climactic moment of the evening banquet. The two on stage soon parted. Vicky waved shyly towards the third floor. Teresa, thank you for your hard work. You can call it a day now. Hearing these words, Teresa finally breathed a sigh of relief, packed up her things, went downstairs, and walked over to Teresa's mom, Payne's father. Teresa's mom was holding Vicky's hand, chatting with her cheerfully and smiling. Your uncle and I got delayed by something on the way. Vicky, I hope you don't mind. How could that be? Auntie, uncle, you've come just in time. We haven't cut the cake yet. Payne's father looked at his son with a pleased expression, patted him on the shoulder, and said with full satisfaction, Payne, I'm very happy that you've settled your lifelong matter. Since you've already given this necklace to Vicky, shouldn't we invite the Song family back? Our two families can discuss and see if we should finalize the marriage. Vicky's face instantly turned bright red, her eyes filled with happiness as she looked at Payne. Then she shifted her gaze to Teresa. I'm fine with anything, but I don't have many friends back home, so I might need Teresa to help out and be my bridesmaid. Teresa rubbed her sore hand, not hearing what was said. It wasn't until Teresa's mom poked her and repeated it that she finally reacted. She looked up, her face still expressionless, revealing neither joy nor sorrow. I'm sorry, I have commitments afterward and probably won't be able to attend the wedding, but I sincerely wish my brother and sister-in-law happiness and a lifetime of togetherness. Upon hearing this, all three of them smiled, except for Payne. He glanced at Teresa with a dark look in his eyes. The faint smile at the corner of her lips slowly faded away. After finishing the long and painful work, Teresa went straight to the bathroom as soon as she got home. After washing up, she pushed open the bedroom door with her exhausted body. Before she could even step inside, a pair of strong hands pinned her against the corridor wall the next second. Then came a torrent of kisses, dense as raindrops, trailing up her still damp neck, leaving behind a trail of crimson marks. This sudden turn of events nearly made Teresa scream on the spot. She pressed her tongue hard against her throat, swallowing back the cries, twisting and turning to escape his grasp. But the more she struggled, Payne kissed her more fiercely, finally gripping her chin to hold her still. She struggled desperately, the terror in her eyes deepening with the sound of approaching footsteps from upstairs. You're insane. Hearing these 3 words, Payne let out a cold laugh with reddened eyes, leaning close to her ear. I am insane. Why don't you scream? Better yet, let everyone come in and see what kind of relationship we really have. Let them see how this brother of yours kisses his sister into complete submission. Only when the footsteps paused and then descended the stairs, Teresa's frightened heart finally calmed down completely. She mustered her strength to pull away his hand blocking the wall, bent down to slip out, her voice still trembling with lingering fear. What on earth is wrong with you? Payne's gaze followed her movement, the shadow in his eyes still lingering. Are you the one going crazy? Who allowed you to call me brother and her sister-in-law? Teresa froze on the spot. She truly couldn't understand. He deliberately got close to her, only to seek revenge. Why must these trivial matters be taken so seriously? What's wrong with me calling you brother and her sister-in-law? Aren't you getting married? You even kissed right in front of me. Teresa, how many times do I have to explain to you? It was just acting. The only reason I kissed Vicky was because I saw our parents. He seemed genuinely angry, his tone urgent and aggressive. Teresa couldn't tell whether his emotions at this moment were real or fake, but she instinctively believed that he was just putting on a show for her. So she went along with his words and nodded slightly. Yes, you're indeed quite good at acting. So how far does this act need to go before it's enough? She has already been hurt beyond recognition, just as he wished. Isn't that enough? The next few words, Teresa didn't speak out, only blinked several times, and the tears she had held back for so long could no longer be contained. She was already exhausted, with no strength left to continue acting in this charade with him. Was he still unwilling to let her go? Hearing these words and seeing these inexplicable tears, Payne's heart also grew flustered. After 4 years together, it was the first time he had seen Teresa with such a helpless and sorrowful expression. No matter what happened in the past, as long as she was with him, she would always be full of energy and smiling. She was afraid he would misunderstand and lose confidence in their relationship. Although he didn't know exactly what had happened, he instinctively stepped forward and hugged her. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't cry. It's my fault. I was just too angry today when I heard you call her sister-in-law. I promise I'll never do this again. Okay. After speaking, he tried to kiss her again. This time, his movements were gentler than ever before. But Teresa still pushed him away. Period. It's been so long. And it's still not over. Yeah, probably because of the fever last time. So it hasn't ended yet. Remembering how dazed she was from the fever that day, Payne had a flicker of worry in his eyes. He didn't force her anymore, gently carrying her into the room, reaching out to turn off the light, and holding her as they got into bed. Teresa was so exhausted that she could barely keep her eyes open and fell into a deep sleep as soon as she touched the bed. Gazing at her peaceful sleeping face under the nightlight, Payne was momentarily stunned. His mind was flooded with a jumble of past memories. And it wasn't until 3 o'clock that he finally kissed her forehead tenderly and drifted off to sleep. The curtains in the room were left open, and the morning sunlight streamed in, waking Payne up. The person lying beside him was still sound asleep, turning slightly and causing waves of soreness in his already numb hand. He opened his eyes and froze when he saw the clock on the table pointing to 9. Why hadn't his biological clock woken him up on time today? Remembering that breakfast at home was usually scheduled around this time, Payne quickly rolled out of bed. After opening the door, he tiptoed lightly, preparing to return to the bedroom at the other end. After just a few steps, Teresa's mom appeared at the top of the stairs. Seeing him emerge from her daughter's room in pajamas, she froze on the spot. Payne couldn't help but glance at his disheveled collar, feeling as if his heart was about to leap out of his chest. On the other end, Teresa's mom also snapped back to reality, her face growing increasingly suspicious. Payne, why are you coming out of Teresa's room? Payne's still groggy mind was on the verge of crashing. Just as he was at a loss for how to explain, the door behind him suddenly opened. Teresa appeared fully dressed, calmly looking at the two people in front of her. Good morning, Mom. Brother, you called me for dinner. Why are you walking so fast? So it was all just a misunderstanding. Teresa's mom finally set her anxious heart at ease and waved to the two children. Come quickly and eat. Teresa responded with a hum, quickened her steps, and holding her mother's hand, went downstairs. Just as she stepped downstairs, she froze, because Vicky was sitting at the dining table, smiling and waving at her. Teresa, I came to discuss wedding arrangements with Payne. You don't mind, do you? Before she could speak, Teresa's mom chimed in with a smile. Silly child. Teresa is Payne's sister, and you're Payne's girlfriend. When you two discuss the wedding, what could a young girl like her possibly mind? Hearing this, Teresa forced a smile. Yes. From now on, she's just a sister. So naturally, there's nothing to mind. She sat down at the dining table, silently listening as Vicky pulled Payne aside to ask him about the wedding. Payne, if we're having a wedding, what do you think about a garden ceremony? Or would a beach wedding be better? Do you prefer diamond or gemstone rings? Teresa kept her head down the entire time, focusing on her meal and not listening to Payne's responses. After finishing her meal, she was about to leave when her phone suddenly received several messages. It was Vicky's transfer, 200,000 yuan. not a penny less. Teresa looked up and just caught the challenging glint in her smiling eyes. Immediately after, another message came through. I really liked the photos you took yesterday, especially those beautiful kiss shots. I'll definitely share them with Payne for appreciation. Your efforts won't go to waste. Teresa replied with an acknowledgement. Then she accepted all the transfers and deposited them into her card. Looking at the account balance of exactly 30 million, she smiled faintly, taking advantage of their distraction during the meal. Teresa went upstairs to change clothes and hailed a taxi. She had arranged to meet several close friends today to say goodbye, and if she didn't leave soon, she would likely be late. Rushing against time, Teresa arrived at the club precisely at noon. After exchanging a few words of greeting, her friends' voices were filled with reluctance to part. Teresa, are you really going abroad to study? How long will you be gone? Are you coming back? Yeah, for 3 years. Then I'll find a job there and settle down gradually. Probably won't come back. Hearing this, the 3 girls all showed expressions of surprise. What about your brother then? He's in the country, and you're settling in the UK. Didn't you two agree to get married in the future? Teresa and Payne's affair was not hidden from her close friends, as this relationship was unacceptable to society. Fearing that keeping it bottled up would make her ill, she confided in a few trusted girlfriends. Now, hearing their question, she forced a smile and said, I've let go. I don't like him anymore. Though she spoke lightly, her friends, having witnessed everything along the way, naturally understood the pain and struggle in her heart. While they didn't know what had made her so resolute, they all stood firmly by her side. Breaking it off is for the best. This way, you won't have to worry about your mother finding out and being heartbroken. Yeah. There are so many handsome guys in the UK. Why worry about not finding a boyfriend? By the way, I've never been to the UK. Teresa, you have to video call me often after you go. I want to feed the white pigeons in the square too. Listening to her girlfriend's comforting chatter, Teresa's face gradually broke into a smile. Yes, she was about to start a new chapter in her life. Why bother being troubled by these past events anymore? For a while after that, Payne didn't return. Teresa didn't care where he had gone. In the final days before leaving, she stayed by her mother's side. The mother and daughter went shopping together, enjoyed many long-missed delicacies, and her mother shared numerous tips for living alone. Time slowly passed by in these warm and ordinary moments. 5 days before departure, Teresa's mom accompanied Payne's father on a business trip. Teresa received a call from her aunt at home, saying that her father's cemetery needed to be relocated due to government planning, and asked both her and her mother to return to handle the matter. Teresa's mom had married into the Quinton family these years. The Quinton family members had already been quite critical of her. She didn't want her mother to be gossiped about again because of this matter, so she decided to go alone. Teresa hurriedly called to arrange the purchase of a high-quality burial plot. Just as she was about to leave for the cemetery to collect the ashes, she unexpectedly ran into Payne, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. At the door, after learning where she was going, he frowned and grasped her hand. Do you even consider me your boyfriend? Your father is also my father. Why didn't you ask me to accompany you for something so important? How could you handle this alone as a young girl? Get in the car. I'm coming with you. Watching him say these words with a grave expression, Teresa could no longer tell if he was sincere or not. Unable to persuade him otherwise and with no time to waste, she had no choice but to get into his car. But halfway there, he suddenly took a detour, saying he needed to pick someone up. When Vicky's figure appeared, Teresa felt a jolt in her heart. She really wanted to ask Payne why it was necessary to bring along someone completely unrelated when moving her father's ashes. Were the two of them truly inseparable? But time was pressing, so she swallowed all her words. On the way to the new cemetery, Teresa walked ahead alone, holding the urn, without saying a word. After everything was prepared and they were about to proceed with the burial, Payne's phone rang. He glanced at the number, frowned, and stood up to walk outside. Teresa didn't ask where he was going, just bent down to place the urn inside. But Vicky blocked her way with a mocking smile. Payne promised to watch the sunset with me today. Dropping you off at the cemetery was just on the way. You didn't know that, did you? Teresa really didn't know, but she didn't care either, only wanting to lay her father to rest as soon as possible. So she completely ignored Vicky's provocation, not even sparing a glance, and was about to bury the urn. Vicky had never been so coldly ignored before. In a fit of anger, She grabbed her. Teresa, stop pretending. Can't you hear me talking to you? Seeing how precious the urn was to her, Vicky hardened her heart, suddenly snatched the box, and smashed it violently onto the ground. With a loud thud, the box tumbled down the steps, shattering into pieces. Pale gray ashes scattered across the ground. Teresa's sanity completely collapsed at this moment. Dad. She ran down like a madwoman, crying and kneeling on the ground, trying to grasp at the light dust. But a sudden gust of wind extinguished her last glimmer of hope. She could only watch helplessly as the ashes were blown away by the wind, desperately trying to hold on to them, yet failing no matter how hard she tried. That was her father, transformed from a living person into a handful of ashes. And now, she couldn't even keep this tiny bit of him. Her rage boiling over, she could no longer contain herself. Struggling to her feet, she walked up to Vicky and slapped her hard across the face. Vicky, these are my father's ashes, the last thing he left me in this world. Do you have any idea? Destroying the remains of the dead condemns you to the 18th level of hell. With a sharp crack, the fair-skinned face instantly swelled red. Vicky, stunned by the blow, was about to retaliate in anger when she caught sight of pain returning just in time from the corner of her eye. Her runaway reason instantly returned, and she took the opportunity to fall backward, tumbling down the stairs, unaware of the context. Pain saw this scene and rushed over to pick up Vicky. Teresa, what are you doing? What am I doing? You should ask her what she's done. This was the first time Pain had seen Teresa in such a hysterical state. He raised his eyes and saw the tear stains on her face, his anger suddenly freezing in place. The next second, Vicky threw herself into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Pain, I accidentally knocked over Teresa's father's urn just now. The wind blew, and everything was gone. Teresa got so angry she pushed me down the stairs. I've bled so much. Doesn't that make us even? Looking at the shattered box nearby, Pain felt his heart tighten. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words that came out carried a different meaning. Vicky didn't mean to. Get out. Teresa uttered just this one word, yet it drained every ounce of her strength. Pain was about to explain further when Vicky tearfully grabbed his sleeve, crying, Pain, it hurts so much. Is my leg broken? Hearing this, Pain glanced at her and ultimately chose to pick up Vicky, quickly walking away. Chapter 9. The staff brought a brand new urn. Teresa carefully placed the last remaining ashes from her palm into it, then knelt before the grave and kowtowed heavily. Dad, I'm sorry. Your daughter was unfilial and loved the wrong man. Dad, I'm sorry. Your daughter has failed in her filial duty by not protecting you. Dad, I'm sorry. Your daughter must leave now and won't be able to visit you for years to come. After kowtowing 3 times, she raised her head and watched a flock of mournfully cawing crows sweep across the sky. A streak of bright red trickled down from her brow, sliding past her slightly reddened eyes before falling, resembling blood and tears. At dusk, Teresa left the cemetery and returned home alone, dragging the things she had sorted out in recent days downstairs. The secret crush diary filled with Pain's name was thrown into the fire by her. The couple items she secretly bought for them were discarded into the trash pile by her. The couple photos she secretly took with Pain were cut into pieces one by her. After dealing with these things, she returned to her room. The moment the door closed, Teresa heard the sound of the door opening downstairs. She locked the door behind her, then turned off the light, groping in the dark to curl up on the bed. Before long, there was a knock at the door. Knock, 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 knock. Teresa, open the door. Teresa, I can explain. It was Pain's voice. She didn't respond, but tears streamed down uncontrollably. An explanation. What was there to explain? Explain that he didn't use her as a tool for revenge, or that he didn't stand by her side after Vicky smashed her father's ashes box. Before long, the knocking ceased, but the phone began vibrating incessantly. Teresa looked at Pain, who was still sending messages to explain, then entered his profile and directly blocked and deleted him. Throughout the night, no matter what noises came from outside, Teresa paid no attention. It wasn't until the next day when she heard her mother's voice that she opened the door and threw herself into her embrace. Teresa's mom didn't understand what was happening, but she still gently patted her daughter's back, soothing her softly as she had done in childhood. Beside them, Pain, who had stayed awake all night, watched the scene in silence for a long time before turning and walking downstairs. In the following days, Teresa didn't want to be bothered by pain, so she slept in her mom's room. Mother and daughter spent their days packing together and their nights holding each other, sharing many little secrets that belonged only to them. In her mother's embrace, Teresa felt a long-lost sense of peace. The night before leaving, she still wanted to sleep with her mom. Teresa's mom was worried that her daughter would stay up too late talking and not get enough rest, so she told her to sleep well. Teresa had to return to her room alone, staring blankly at the dark ceiling. At midnight, the sound of unlocking came from the door. It was Payne, who sneaked in again with a spare key and pulled her into his embrace. Still mad at me? I was wrong. Don't be angry anymore. Okay. You've been giving me the cold shoulder for 3 days. If this continues, I'll really go crazy. Teresa remained silent, closing her eyes, hearing the faint sound of breathing. Payne had a trace of helplessness flash through his eyes. He knew she had been having a hard time these past few days and didn't want to trouble her further. So he just kissed her forehead, listening to the heartbeat so close at hand. Teresa didn't sleep all night. In the morning, Payne's phone suddenly rang. She picked it up and saw Vicky's name. She then reached out to wake him, holding the phone in front of him. Bleary-eyed, Payne squinted as he pressed the answer button. After just a few words, he released his grip around her waist and abruptly sat up. After hanging up, he turned back and softly called, "Teresa, don't turn on the light. Let's go." In the darkness, Teresa's voice was barely audible, devoid of any tone. Payne thought she had already cooled off, gave a hum of acknowledgement, and got up to walk out. Before opening the door, for some reason, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but turn back to look at the figure curled up on the bed. "Teresa, I'm going out for a while. I'll come back to keep you company when I return." Teresa didn't need his company, nor would she wait for him to come back. They were over. Hearing the sound of a car starting outside the villa, Teresa only turned on the light after watching Payne drive away. She got out of bed, changed clothes, and washed up as usual. After getting everything ready, Teresa's mom knocked on the door outside, calling her to get up for breakfast. She obediently finished her meal, just in time to see Payne's father directing the servants to carry her luggage downstairs. Just as the last suitcase was about to be moved, she suddenly remembered something and returned to her already emptied-out room. She pulled open a drawer, took out the bank card and breakup letter inside. Then, she placed them all in Payne's room, right where he would see them the moment he returned. "Payne, this time, I'm the one leaving you first." After finishing all this, the gentle call of Teresa's mom came from downstairs. "Teresa, hurry up, or we'll miss the flight." She responded and quickly went downstairs. The car outside the villa was waiting. Teresa bid farewell to the two elders one by one before turning to board the car heading to the airport. Behind her, Teresa's mom spoke with a choked voice. "Teresa, take good care of yourself. And also, I've put the phone number of your arranged marriage partner in your pocket. If anything happens, be sure to contact him. You focus on chasing your dreams. Don't worry about things at home." Teresa rolled down the car window, responding with reddened eyes until the figures behind her were no longer visible. Then she raised her gaze to look out the window. The sun is shining brightly today, and the future looks promising, just like the rest of her life. The flight to London took off punctually at 8 from the airport. Drowsiness washed over her like a tide, and she couldn't hold on any longer. Slowly closing her bruised eyes, "I slept for over 7 hours this time." When I woke up again, Teresa finally realized that she had truly left. Alone, far from home, in a foreign land. This was a future she had never envisioned before. Only after the change did she realize that farewell wasn't as painful as she thought, and loneliness wasn't as heartbreaking. She took this step calmly. No tears, no regrets, only endless relief, and some expectations that, though not fervent, grew steadily stronger. Under the influence of this mindset, Teresa felt considerably more at ease. She took out her phone, opened the list of precautions she had prepared before departure, and read through them carefully. The apartment in London and all the necessary living supplies had already been arranged, leaving her with nothing to worry about. The only thing that slightly troubled her was the person who had arranged all this for her, namely, the boy who was said to have been born around the same year and month as her, and with whom she had a childhood betrothal. What was his name again? Teresa simply couldn't remember, so she took out the note her mother had slipped her and added him on IG using his phone number. IG was quickly approved. A black and white profile picture, The name reads, Rain. As she kept looking, Teresa shook her head, gradually banishing from her mind those few words her mother had reminded her of before boarding the plane. Things like, give it a try, keep in touch more, ask for help if you need anything. He looks like an aloof and indifferent character. It's better to reduce contact and avoid troubling others. A flurry of wild thoughts, and several hours flew by in no time. As the plane touched down, Teresa's already nervous heart began to beat even faster. She pushed 3 suitcases and saw a sign with her name on it as soon as she exited the gate. Beneath the sign stood a family of 3. It was Teresa's mom, childhood friend, and sister-like figure Wendy, along with her husband and son. The Sampson family had immigrated 20 years ago, so Teresa had only seen this aunt in old photos, leaving her with a vague impression. She was hesitating whether to greet them first. Sampson when Auntie already spotted her and started waving enthusiastically. Teresa, over here. Teresa felt her face grow warm as she forced a polite smile in response, making her way toward them with difficulty. But the crowd was too dense, and her luggage was heavy. Before she knew it, one of her suitcases got pushed away by the flow of people, just as she was starting to feel a little anxious. Rain, who had been standing by the door, took a few steps forward and held the suitcase for her. As she pulled the other 2 suitcases along, the words, thank you, hadn't even left her lips when he proactively took the suitcase from her left hand. Aunt Sampson, who had arrived late, quickly had her husband take the other suitcase from her hand, then linked arms with her, pulling out a tissue to wipe the sweat from her forehead. Teresa looked up in pleasant surprise and met Wendy's sparkling eyes. Teresa, welcome to London. For the first stop upon arriving in London, Sampson's family took Teresa straight home. It wasn't that she hadn't subtly expressed her wish to go to the apartment, but Sampson's aunt firmly vetoed the idea. The apartment isn't fully furnished yet, and you still have a long time before school starts. Stay with Auntie for now. It'll be more convenient. Unable to decline the warm invitation, Teresa had no choice but to brace herself and agree. Along the way, Wendy held her hand and chattered endlessly, reminiscing about many past events. On one hand, Teresa felt happy for her mother. Even after all this time, her friends still cherished her and remembered the youthful days they had shared. On the other hand, Teresa felt a tinge of melancholy, as such a deep friendship now spanned great distances, sustained only by memories and longing. Mom, who is far across the ocean, now sees the 2 people she cares about most in her life come together. Yet she can only think of them through the objects they left behind. Isn't this a form of cruelty? As she spoke, Wendy seemed to realize this too, letting out a long sigh. If only your mom could come too. Teresa heard the regret in her tone and quickly offered some comforting words. It's okay, Mom said once her visa is processed. She'll definitely come visit Auntie. Wendy immediately broke into a happy smile. With just one sentence, you made Auntie so happy. Teresa's words are truly sweet, unlike Rain, who barely speaks 3 sentences a day. Hearing this, Teresa's eyes flickered with surprise. So he's not just cold to strangers. Subconsciously, she looked up and through the rearview mirror. Her gaze met Rain's eyes looking back at her. Their gazes met in the mirror, then quickly darted away, just as Teresa was feeling somewhat awkward. Rain, who had remained silent the entire way, finally spoke up. When is your mother coming? I'll arrange the room first. Hearing his words, Wendy reacted more strongly than Teresa, her eyes widening abruptly. Rain, why the sudden enthusiasm? Did you take the wrong medicine? Rain was already used to his mother teasing him and calmly retorted. If I don't arrange it, won't you just dump it on me? You brat. How dare you talk to your mother like that? Teresa is still here. Can't you at least help maintain your mom's image as a virtuous wife and loving mother? Listening to the mother and son bickering, Teresa couldn't help but let out a muffled laugh, covering her mouth. Rain's father also burst into laughter, instantly lightening the somewhat dull atmosphere in the carriage. Seeing the girl finally smile, Wendy also relaxed, patting her head with a gentle smile. Teresa, just treat our home as your own. Although Rain doesn't talk much, feel free to ask him for anything. If he dares not to do it, I'll scold him for you. Such a light-hearted and lively family atmosphere made Teresa's tense heart relax considerably, her eyes crinkling with laughter. After the car stopped, she got out first, ready to retrieve her luggage. When the trunk opened, she was about to reach for it, but another pair of hands took the suitcase first. She looked up in surprise and saw Rain nodding slightly at her and tilting his chin up a bit. "Let me handle this. You and my mom go check out the room first." Teresa was well aware of the weight of her luggage and felt genuinely embarrassed. Just as she was about to decline, Rain spoke again, his tone carrying a faint trace of resignation. "It's fine. Go ahead. Otherwise, I'll get scolded again." Though it was only a temporary stay for a month, the room arranged for Teresa at Samson's home, whether in terms of size, orientation, or the furnishings, left her utterly astonished. For a moment, she even doubted whether she was here to stay overnight or to inspect the place. Wendy was also visiting this room for the first time. Seeing that even cosmetics had been arranged, she showed high approval and, unusually, praised her son. Who would have thought Rain, usually so quiet, could be so considerate in his actions? "Teresa, do you see anything else that's missing?" Teresa quickly shook her head, her eyes brimming with surprise and delight, looking at her face that bore a 70% resemblance to Teresa's mom, now wearing such an obedient expression. Wendy felt her heart melting and couldn't resist reaching out to pinch her cheeks. Just as she raised her hand, she was caught by Rain, who had just entered, and was pressed against the suitcase. With her plan foiled, Wendy pouted and looked at her tactless son, her tone full of suspicion. "Are you sure you didn't take the wrong medicine today? Why do you seem more meddlesome than before?" Rain glanced at his casually postured mother, then turned to the astonished Teresa, politely offering a few reminders. "I checked the weather. London mornings and evenings are cooler than back home. You probably only brought summer clothes. There are jackets in the closet, all new and washed. You can change if you feel cold." Teresa never expected that someone who barely spoke 10 words online in 10 days could be so thoughtful and considerate in person, even attending to such small details. Recalling her own petty suspicions on the plane, she couldn't help but feel a pang of shame. With a mix of guilt and sincerity, she thanked him. Two people immersed in polite social interaction completely failed to notice the Wendy behind them, who was wearing an extremely gossipy smile. She quietly slipped away, returned to the bedroom, took out her phone, and sent a message to her best friend who was thousands of miles away. "It looks like our dream of becoming in-laws is very promising." Teresa's mom couldn't stop smiling after receiving this message. She clicked open the photo secretly taken by her best friend, looking at the handsome young man and beautiful woman in the picture. They seemed like a perfect match no matter how you looked at them. Beside her, Payne's father heard the commotion and leaned over to take a glance, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "So this is the boy who's Teresa's childhood fiancé. They seem to be getting along well. If both kids can settle their marriage in the next few years, it'll be a huge relief for us." Teresa's mom felt the same way, her smile so wide it couldn't be contained. "Payne and Vicky, Teresa and Rain are all good kids. It would be great if they could settle down early. But if Teresa really ends up with Rain, they'll probably live abroad, which does worry me a bit. Children have to grow up eventually. As long as they're happy, we parents will be happy too. As for the distance, it's not a problem. In a couple of years, I'll retire. And if you miss Teresa, I'll just accompany you to visit her. Okay, we can spend half the year at home and half in London. Consider it a vacation." "London? You're going to the UK for vacation?" Just as he pushed the door open, Payne overheard the last part and casually asked, seeing him come back drunk. Payne's father immediately wiped the smile off his face and glared over with darkened eyes. "You ran out early in the morning. Didn't answer any of the 7 or 8 calls I made. Turns out you were out drinking. Your sister today." Listening to these harsh accusations, Payne's previously indifferent face gradually turned cold. Teresa's mom feared the father and son would start arguing again, so she quickly stepped in to mediate and changed the subject. "It's unavoidable for the kid to drink a little during work socials. Why are you scolding him? Payne, are you feeling unwell? Go wash up first. Auntie will make you some hangover soup." His good mood ruined, Payne lost patience for pretending with her, tossing out a remark before heading upstairs. No need. After a cold shower, Payne felt his stomach begin to cramp painfully. Enduring the discomfort, he rummaged through the cabinets but only found an empty pack of stomach medicine, which made him so angry that he punched the table. Cold sweat mixed with water droplets trickled down his forehead. Payne gritted his teeth and wiped his face, his eyes revealing a cold, sinister glint. Just as he was about to head downstairs to the hospital, he pushed open the door and ran straight into Teresa's mom, who was coming upstairs with a bowl of hangover soup. As soon as she saw him, She immediately handed over the plate in her hand, her tone full of concern. "Pain, drink the soup, or you'll definitely feel unwell. I'll talk to your father. You just rest well." Pain suppressed the pain, putting on a nonchalant expression, gave a nod, and took the plate back to his room. The moment the door closed, his hands trembled uncontrollably, spilling the hot soup, and the scent of honey ginger broth quickly filled the entire room. He couldn't help but collapse to the ground, staring at the steaming bowl before him, yet unable to reach for it. When the pain had subsided somewhat, he picked up the bowl, staggered into the bathroom, and poured the soup directly into the toilet. Watching the golden yellow liquid being flushed away by the water, Pain felt his stomach settle considerably. He casually tossed the bowl into the sink, leaned against the wall as he walked toward the room, and collapsed onto the bed. His still damp hair quickly soaked the blanket. He lay motionless on the wet bed. It was unclear how much time had passed before the tormenting pain finally faded away. He opened his bloodshot eyes, picked up his phone, and called his mother, who was far away in Paris. One after another, only endless beeps echoed in the room. His mother didn't answer his call, only replying with a message. "Mr. Payne, sorry, manager is in a meeting. I'll notify her to call you back as soon as the meeting ends." It was still sent by the secretary. Reading word by word, Payne had tears welling up in his eyes. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that Tracy called to ask what he wanted. A single sentence left Payne speechless. He looked at the circled date on the calendar, his voice hoarse. "Mom, it's my birthday in a few days. Can you come back? I have work that day. Tell Annie what you want, and she'll prepare it for you. It's getting late there. You should rest early. I'm hanging up now." Tracy didn't give her son another chance to speak, hanging up as soon as she finished. Work, always work. Staring at the darkened screen, Payne clutched the blanket so tightly that his fingers turned bloodless. He didn't want to cry out loud, so he grabbed a pillow and pressed it tightly against his nose, suffocating himself until his face turned red. Only when the clock on the wall struck 12 did he throw the pillow aside and get up. After washing his face in the bathroom, he turned off the room's light and quietly stepped out the door. He walked toward the other end of the second floor. This time, Payne opened the door of the last room without using a key. His extremely gloomy mood finally eased a little. The room was much quieter than usual, with no air conditioning on, making it feel somewhat stuffy. The jasmine-scented incense usually lit daily wasn't burning today. Payne felt a bit unaccustomed to it. He walked familiarly to the bedside and reached his hand under the covers, but all he touched was emptiness. He bent down and felt around the other side, still finding no one. No one here, at this hour, staying out all night. The moment this possibility crossed his mind, Payne's expression darkened. He took out his phone and found Teresa, then sent a question mark. A second later, the phone dinged. Not an instant reply, but the notification sound of a rejected message. Staring at the red exclamation mark on the screen, Payne realized that Teresa still hadn't released him. Still angry. Wasn't everything fine this morning? Payne's restless heart grew increasingly impatient, leaving him no choice but to curl up under the blanket. The familiar scent gradually eased his furrowed brow. Drowsiness slowly crept in. A dreamless night passed. His biological clock precisely awakened Payne at 5 in the morning. He opened his eyes, his hands instinctively reaching out to both sides. Still nothing but emptiness. Didn't come back all night. Payne had just begun to recover his mood, but it instantly plummeted to rock bottom again. He returned to his room, intending to use his phone to contact someone. But as he collapsed onto the bed, he unexpectedly felt something beneath the pillow. Reaching under, he found two objects. Is this a surprise prepared for him? Payne could think of no other possibility. After all, in the past, Teresa would secretly hide apology gifts under his pillow whenever she made him angry, waiting for him to discover them. This was their unspoken secret between the two of them. He carefully felt around, then judged by the touch that the object beneath was a letter, while the one on top seemed to be a bank card. As for the letter, he didn't need to look to know it was surely a love letter. What about the bank card? Startup funds prepared to celebrate his birthday. At the thought of this, Payne's gloomy mood instantly vanished. No matter what she gave or what surprises she prepared, he didn't care. As long as she remembered his birthday, he was satisfied. Holding the card, Payne recalled how hard she had worked to earn money for over half a month and suddenly understood. So the preparations had already begun back then. Did you pull another all-nighter working overtime last night? Which is why you didn't come home. Thinking of her face, pale from exhaustion, Payne felt a pang of heartache in his eyes. He placed the letter back under the pillow, took the card, and went out. Mr. Payne, we've confirmed it. There's 30 million in the card. Upon hearing the amount reported by his secretary, Payne nearly spat out his coffee on the spot. 30 million. What kind of birthday surprise costs that much? Where did she get such a large sum of cash? Payne was utterly perplexed, but he vaguely sensed something unusual and beckoned to his secretary. Check the young lady's recent itinerary, where she's been and what she's bought. The secretary, upon receiving the instructions, immediately set about making the arrangements. Half an hour later, she walked in with the documents, carefully observing her boss's expression, hesitating and unsure how to begin. Seeing her stammering, Payne felt his heart skip a beat. He slowly sat up from the back of his chair, folded his hands on the desk, and spoke in a deep voice. What is it? Speak. The secretary tremblingly handed over the document in her hand and lowered her head. Young miss. She received an offer from the University of London. She took the 8 a.m. flight yesterday and has already gone abroad. Word by word Payne understood clearly. Yet when combined, they made him ponder for a long time. Someone who lived under the same roof, someone he saw every day, received an offer from the University of London and went abroad yesterday. Is this really something that could happen? Payne's first reaction was disbelief, but when he skeptically opened the file and saw the admission letter on the first page, he was completely stunned. The second page was an expired plane ticket, and the third page showed visa application records. On every single item, there was Teresa's handwritten signature. Faced with these irrefutable pieces of evidence, Payne felt as if his mind had been struck by thunder. All the emotions he had desperately concealed and suppressed for 10 years came crashing down like a landslide and tidal wave at this moment. With bloodshot eyes, he rushed downstairs like a madman. For the first time in his life, Payne lost his composure in front of everyone. Payne returned home to find Payne's father had just left with Teresa's mom. The house was eerily quiet, devoid of any presence except for the dull thud of his heels against the staircase. He couldn't think of anything else. His mind was fixated on one thing alone: opening that door. The door he had opened countless times before. This time when he pushed it open, Payne saw nothing but emptiness. The bathroom, the walk-in closet, the small study. He knew every corner of the room and what was placed there by heart. But now, nothing remains in sight. All the things that held their secrets have now vanished without a trace. Only when he saw it with his own eyes, Payne finally believed that Teresa had truly left. In an instant, the towering walls of his psychological defenses crumbled and collapsed. A surge of panic and despair overwhelmed his nerves. He couldn't stop trembling, frantically searching around in confusion. The wardrobe, the table, behind the door. He checked every possible hiding spot. The entire room was in complete disarray, yet there was still no trace to be found. Finally, he pinned his hopes on the messy bed and flung open the blanket, but still found nothing. He hurried back to the room and tore open the letter. The letter was hastily written, containing only a few sentences. The first sentence announced the breakup and wished him a happy life together with Vicky till old age. The second sentence was to tell him that the 30 million in the card was the money she returned to the Quinton family. The third sentence stated that Teresa's mom was not the other woman. His mother and Payne's father had divorced 2 years earlier than the publicly announced date, and at that time, Teresa's mom had not yet met Payne's father. Each one was like a sharp blade, stabbing straight into Payne's heart. He felt as if his entire heart was being slowly sliced apart, layer by layer of flesh and blood scraped away, the pain nearly unbearable. With clear, yet desperate awareness, he realized one thing: Teresa already knew the secret he had buried deep in his heart. That secret he had believed to be flawless, naturally unfolding, and labeled as revenge. It had already been leaked without his knowledge. After learning the truth, Teresa remained silent and never thought of retaliating. Payne had imagined the despair she would show upon knowing the truth, the harmless revenge she might take, even the hysterical wailing. None of it happened. From beginning to end, she did only one thing: leave him. After his deliberate and calculated seduction, she threw herself at him like a moth to a flame, self-destructing. Teresa didn't even utter a word of hatred. He deceived her trust, toyed with her emotions, and sought revenge against the mother she loved most. Each and every one of them was a feat he took great pride in. Yet she didn't care in the slightest. She didn't hate him. How could she not? If one has truly loved, can they really manage not to hate? Or, from beginning to end, Teresa was merely putting on an act, playing along in this sometimes dull, sometimes fascinating drama with him. The moment this thought emerged, Payne felt as though he had plunged into an ice cellar, with every inch of his body overtaken by a bone-chilling cold. He couldn't accept Teresa's lack of hatred towards him, because the opposite of hate is love. No hatred means no love either. Rather than facing her indifference, Payne would prefer her hatred and endure her revenge. He tried his utmost to deny the fact, but the sight of this empty bedroom made it impossible for him to convince himself. Hatred and the absence of it wrestled and echoed in his mind, each vying for dominance. The mental strain from the struggle and the fractures caused by the constant tug-of-war made Payne's mind feel like it was about to explode. Clutching his head, he collapsed to the ground in agony, violently pounding his temples with his fists, desperate to save himself from utter ruin. At this moment, he seemed to return to that rainy night when he was 10 years old, becoming once again the child abandoned by his mother. And this time, all the bitter consequences he tasted were entirely of his own making. Because of that sleep on the plane, Teresa adjusted to the time difference very smoothly. Just past 11, she started feeling drowsy, yawning as she headed back to her room and fell asleep the moment her head hit the pillow. At 2 in the morning, a sudden phone call jolted her awake from her dreams. She picked up the phone and saw it was her mom, groggily pressing the answer button. The next second, a familiar voice brimming with anger reached her ears. "Teresa, who allowed you to go to England without saying a word?" It was Payne. Teresa's mind instantly cleared. She turned on the desk lamp and sat up, glancing at the clock on the table, reminding him, "It's 2 a.m. in London, brother." Every word pierced Payne's nerves deeply, his speech grinding through clenched teeth. "I told you not to call me brother, but we are siblings registered in the same household, and that's an unchangeable fact." Hearing her state this insurmountable fact between them in such a calm tone, the hidden panic in Payne's heart reached its peak at this moment. He could no longer control the frenzied impulses raging within his body, and irrational words spilled from his lips. "Did you ever think we were siblings when you were begging for pleasure beneath me?" As the words fell, both of them sank into silence. Payne also realized he had spoken wrongly, his heart tightening, yet he offered no apology, because he desperately needed proof, a proof that could show Teresa still loved him. So even though these words were full of offense and insult, he still wanted an answer. But there was only prolonged silence on the phone. Payne wondered several times if the other end had already hung up. His heart beat faster and faster in this boundless silence, dragging his reason down into the darkness with it. Just as he was about to completely lose control, Teresa finally answered him. "I've never regretted anything that happened before, because I truly loved you back then, Payne. But my love is not invincible or impervious to harm. It might withstand external gossip and slander, but it cannot endure a heart that's rotting from within. My mother never interfered in your parents' relationship. She has a clear conscience, and so do I. But between you and me, there's been too much scheming. If we continue like this, the casualties won't just be you and me. Let's end this relationship here, brother. Only then can it be a satisfactory conclusion for you, for me, for Mom, and for Uncle. Don't you think?" Satisfactory. From the day he learned of his parents' divorce at the age of 12, Payne no longer held any hope for that word. He thought it was Teresa's mom who destroyed his family, so he hated this woman but could only feign politeness. Yet during their interactions, whenever he saw her kindness toward Teresa, his heart would be shrouded in jealousy. In the decade-long tug-of-war between pretense and reality, he himself became utterly split in two. One half demanded he remember the taste of hatred and use Teresa's feelings to exact revenge. The other half of him was lulled into letting go of his hatred and integrating into his father's newly formed family. As days passed, he grew increasingly indecisive, even beginning to indulge in it, finding it hard to extricate himself. The one who set the trap ultimately became a pawn in the game, with love's direction no longer in their control. And when the final moment arrived, Payne did not obtain everything he desired. The person who was once trapped in the maze has stepped out, becoming an onlooker, and told him his first move was wrong from the start. Payne could not accept this fact, just as he couldn't accept Teresa had already moved on from him. He stubbornly refused to let go, insisting on an answer. He asked Teresa a question. Come back, Let's talk properly. Okay, we can't go back anymore, brother. Teresa could only, and only wanted to, answer him this way. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Listening to his rapid breathing, Teresa knew he was on the verge of collapse. She didn't want to provoke him, to drive him mad, to destroy this family. So in the end, she pleaded with him in the most sincere tone. Let my mother go. She really hasn't done anything wrong, brother. She has given her all for you, for uncle, for this family, just wanting to obtain a stable and peaceful happiness. Please let her go. The flames of hatred that had long been entangled in Payne's heart slowly extinguished in this choked-up plea. A sense of bewildered awakening and unreality gradually spread from his heart to all around him. He fell into confusion, unable to understand what he had truly loved or hated all these years. Like viewing flowers through fog, more elusive than fishing for the moon in water. Payne held his phone and stood alone on the balcony for a long time, until Teresa's mom knocked on the door. He suddenly snapped out of it. Turning around and seeing her, his gaze instinctively began to evade. Teresa's mom handed him a cup of coffee as usual, her tone full of concern. Had a fight with Teresa. She didn't want to leave home either. She just wanted to go out and see more of the world. She's still young, after all. Don't blame her. She knew you were busy and didn't want you to worry, which is why she asked us not to tell you. Listening to her rambling words of comfort, Payne merely gave a non-committal, handed the phone back to her, and prepared to leave. He really didn't know how to face Teresa's mom and could only avoid being around her. But just as he reached the door, she called out to him again. Payne, your birthday is coming up soon. How would you like to celebrate it? With friends? Or should I organize something for you? After the roller coaster of a morning, Payne had already put this matter behind him. He never expected that the only person who offered to celebrate his birthday would be someone he used to dislike the most. For a moment, he felt a mix of complex emotions, but still politely declined. No need. I'm going to Europe this afternoon. Europe. Hearing her puzzled question, Payne feared she might suspect something and quickly added, to find my mom. The little episode during the night left Teresa unable to sleep well for the rest of the night. When the alarm went off, she still forced herself to get up. After all, she was at someone else's home and didn't want to leave a bad impression. But when she finished washing up and went downstairs, she found the living room empty. Not a soul in sight. Sampson family. Is this waking up early or planning to sleep in? Teresa, I'm a bit confused myself at the moment. She was just about to go for a stroll outside when someone suddenly appeared, startling her. Upon seeing her, Rain slightly bowed in greeting and then handed over the breakfast he was holding. Just arrived in London and already up this early. Have you adjusted to the time difference yet? Teresa patted her chest, hesitated for a few seconds, then took the breakfast and sat down. Pretty much. What about uncle and aunt? Have they gone out? Rain turned back to the kitchen, brought out another portion, and placed a glass of juice in front of her before answering. They're not up yet. They usually wake after 10. Don't worry about them. Get up whenever you feel like it. There's staff in the kitchen. Just let them know what you'd like to eat. Such a laid-back style truly matches the atmosphere of their household. Teresa understood and decided to set her morning alarm to 9 o'clock later. After the two of them finished breakfast quietly, she looked at Rain and tentatively asked a question. It's the weekend. Do you have time? I'd like to go check out the apartment. Rain nodded understandingly. I'm free. I'll take you there. The apartment is located near the University of London, with an excellent location and a quiet environment. Teresa was very satisfied. Rain first accompanied her to the room to take a look, carefully noting down what items needed to be added. Then he took her around the neighborhood, showing her nearby supermarkets, restaurants, parking spots, and even the small alleys. Teresa tried her best to remember and expressed her heartfelt gratitude to him. Rain didn't mind much. Seeing that it was almost lunchtime, he proactively asked her what she'd like to eat for lunch. She wasn't very familiar with the local tastes and didn't want to make decisions on her own, so she said she'd follow his recommendation. Rain didn't hesitate either and picked a Chinese restaurant, then took her there. After spending more than a day together, Teresa unexpectedly found him to be quite a good person. Compared to Sampson and Rain's father, Rain really didn't talk much, but it's not that he's aloof. It's just that unless you ask him, he rarely offers his opinion. Though he was rather quiet, he was very reliable when it came to getting things done. even leaving Teresa with the impression that he was capable of anything. Thus, without realizing it, she naturally developed a sense of closeness and trust toward him. Just as they finished ordering, Sam's aunt called to ask when they would be back. Rain glanced at her, seeking her opinion. Teresa made a hand gesture of the number 4, and he responded accordingly. After hanging up the phone, he briefly summarized the conversation. My mom said she's prepared a welcome dinner for you tonight and wants us to head over once we're done here. Welcome dinner. Such a grand occasion. Teresa felt flattered. But since everything was already arranged, she decided to follow the local customs without voicing any opinions. After lunch, the two took a walk around the school before heading straight over. Just as they stepped out of the school gate, Teresa looked up and saw pain, the smile frozen at the corner of her lips. Rain noticed the change in her mood and followed her gaze, only to see a man striding straight toward her. Instinctively, he stepped between them, shielding her behind him. Watching his actions, Payne, who had just gotten off the plane, turned livid with anger and raised his fist to throw a punch. But as soon as his hand rose, it was Rain who tightly gripped it, leaving him completely unable to move. Rain glanced at him, then turned to look at Teresa. You know him. Teresa hadn't expected him to catch up so quickly, nor had she anticipated encountering him here. Though Rain asked, she still answered, my brother, her boyfriend. The two spoke simultaneously, one utterly indifferent, the other seething with anger. Rain's usually expressionless face revealed a subtle shift at this moment, but in the end, he chose to trust Teresa, releasing his grip and stepping back to maintain a safe distance. Payne gave him a deep look, his tone brimming with resentment. Who is he this time? Teresa knew he was very possessive, her tone full of helplessness. Friends. Just two simple words. Payne just couldn't believe it. But he also knew now wasn't the time to dwell on this, so he turned and grabbed Teresa's hand, wanting to take her away. Come with me. Teresa showed no intention of moving and broke free from his grasp, taking a few steps toward Rain. I have things to do. No time for this. With just one sentence, Payne's suppressed anger was ignited. He looked over with disbelief in his eyes, his brows tightly furrowed. Is this how you speak to me? Teresa knew he was angry, but she didn't care anymore. Speaking calmly, I don't think there's anything wrong with my attitude. I'm just stating the facts. Payne couldn't help but laugh as he listened, his eyes glinting with a cold light. Something wrong. What could be wrong? Going on a date with this friend. Teresa, don't forget, I haven't agreed to break up yet. Teresa's expression darkened, yet her eyes still held defiance. Must you push this to the point of no return? Payne, can't we just part amicably? Payne, having known her for 10 years, this was the first time he'd seen her so angry, and for a moment, he felt somewhat at a loss. Yet in this relationship, he had grown accustomed to the dominant position of controlling everything. So in this moment of confrontation, he fundamentally refused to show weakness or back down. Those suppressed turbulent emotions were now surging to the surface, restless and ready to erupt. No, I've said it before, you can only be mine. Teresa had realized that he had now entered a stubborn state and could no longer engage in rational communication, so she had already prepared to give up on further discussion. Just as she was about to leave directly, Rain, who had been quietly observing the situation, suddenly spoke up. Teresa is an independent person capable of thought. She has never belonged to anyone, and under circumstances where you disrespect her personality and wishes, I believe she has the right to cease communication with you. After saying this, he didn't even bother to look at Payne's reaction and turned to Teresa to seek her opinion. It's almost 4 o'clock. Shall we go? Teresa looked back at him and nodded firmly, watching the two turn to leave. Payne's anger was completely ignited. He rushed forward like a madman, grabbing Teresa's shoulders in an attempt to forcibly keep her. But Rain gave him no chance at all, reaching out to pull the person beside him by the shoulder and effortlessly drawing them into his embrace. At the same time, he raised his other hand and effortlessly pushed Payne 3 meters away, crashing into the flower bed. Looking at the person who had fallen awkwardly to the ground, his voice carried a hint of coldness. No matter who you are, you shouldn't resort to violence when communication fails. I believe this is a principle every adult should understand. Payne watched the two intimately close individuals, his eyes nearly spitting fire. Ignoring the scrapes on his arm, he got up ready to pick a fight with Rain. Before he could act, The school security guards who had been observing the situation stepped in to restrain him as things were escalating. Seeing the situation was under control, Rain didn't want to linger in this troublesome place any longer and left with Teresa. The whole way back, he asked no questions, pretending nothing had happened. This conscious silence made Teresa feel somewhat uneasy. She pondered for a long while before finally speaking up tentatively. "Could you please keep what just happened a secret?" Rain nodded calmly while driving. "Of course. This is your personal privacy. I won't let anyone else know. You can rest assured." Hearing his promise, Teresa didn't doubt it at all and let out a slight sigh of relief. Looking at the villa right in front of her, she thanked him sincerely. "Thank you for today." After parking the car, Rain finally turned to look at her, his expression once again cold and indifferent. "You're welcome. You're our guest, so it's the least I could do. But judging by your brother's behavior today, he probably won't give up harassing you. I'm worried about your safety. If you plan to go out later, would you let me accompany you?" This well-reasoned statement left Teresa completely stunned. She never expected that after just one meeting, he had already grasped Payne's personality and way of doing things, let alone that he would take the initiative to offer her protection. But she had to admit, his concerns were all valid. From her understanding of Payne, after suffering a silent defeat today, he would never let it go lightly and would definitely find an opportunity to continue harassing her. Rain's concerns were indeed highly likely to come true. After some thought, Teresa agreed to inform him before going out in the future. Rain felt relieved and then took her upstairs. As soon as the two pushed open the door, Wendy started popping confetti. "Surprise! Let's welcome Teresa to London." Teresa was startled by the sound and nearly stumbled at the doorway. Rain, who had anticipated the surprise prepared by his mother, quickly reached out to steady her, casually picking off the flower petals that had landed on her head. Teresa's attention was drawn to a group of blonde, blue-eyed foreigners in the living room. Her pupils dilated suddenly, her tone laced with suspicion. "What's this?" Wendy didn't beat around the bush, taking her by the hand and leading her to the group, introducing each one in turn. "They're all neighbors from nearby. This is Wilson. This is Alvin." Throughout the evening, Teresa was introduced to many unfamiliar friends. At first, she felt a bit awkward, but with Wendy smoothing things over, she gradually relaxed and immersed herself in the cheerful and joyful atmosphere. After finishing a dance, she felt a bit tired and found a corner to sit in, watching the lively scene before her. The invisible pressure that had built up in her heart gradually dissipated and lightened. Rain, who had been nowhere to be seen, just happened to come downstairs at that moment. He casually picked up 2 drinks, walked over to her, and handed her one. "My mom loves a lively atmosphere and wanted to introduce some friends to you, which is why she invited so many people. If you're tired, you can go rest first. They're used to entertaining themselves and won't mind." Watching Aunt Samson still dancing gracefully, Teresa showed an expression of admiration and spoke with a smile. "I know Auntie means well, and I had a great time without feeling tired at all. Seeing them so full of energy really lifted my spirits." Seeing that she didn't mind, Rain allowed a faint smile to curve the corners of his lips. "As long as you're happy, that's what matters. People should always look forward. There's no need to dwell on things that are already set in stone." Hearing him suddenly offer such comforting words, Teresa felt a ripple stir in the lake of her heart. She glanced at him with a hint of surprise in her eyes, unable to resist the urge to chat with him a bit more. "Before coming to the UK, I thought you might be someone difficult to get along with, and I planned to keep my distance. But after meeting you, you're completely different from what I imagined. In just a day and a half, you've become the most trusted and closest friend I have in London. It's really hard to believe." Hearing her praise-filled remark, Rain smiled even more deeply. "It's my honor to have your approval, but the reason we didn't chat much on phone before was due to the time difference. I didn't want to disturb your rest. Also, I felt many things couldn't be properly discussed online, so I planned to arrange things after you arrived. That's why I rarely sent messages. So that's how it is." Teresa finally understood why his behavior had changed so drastically. It turned out he had been overthinking things, but this was actually consistent with his personality. For the next 2 days, Teresa stayed at home without going out. Samson, Aunt and Rain's father went to work, leaving only her and Rain at home. Whether it was Samson Aunt's specific instructions or simply to keep her from being bored, Rain took her on a tour around the house. The underground wine cellar, the rooftop terrace garden, the private theater on the 3rd floor. the swimming pool in the backyard. They moved from one place to another, enjoying themselves thoroughly, chatting occasionally until the sky darkened. At night, Aunt Samson simply started a barbecue party in the backyard, pulling Teresa aside and sharing many embarrassing childhood stories about her and Teresa's mom. Rain's father and Rain stood by watching the fire, occasionally bringing over the grilled skewers and refilling empty glasses. The summer night breeze was gentle, and the garden was in full bloom with flowers of all colors, their fragrance intoxicating. Amid the romantic and cheerful piano music, Teresa completely relaxed. She gazed at the faintly visible stars in the sky, feeling that life was infinitely beautiful. Just as she was feeling content, Teresa's mom video called. After chatting for a while, Wendy took the phone away. The sisters had endless topics to talk about as soon as they met. Thoroughly enjoying their conversation, Teresa stood up to grab a can of ice-cold cola, stretched lazily, and happened to lock eyes with Rain. Both of them burst into laughter, looking at the plate of chicken wings in his hand. She didn't stand on ceremony and casually picked up a skewer to eat. Nearby, Wendy caught sight of this scene and quickly pointed the camera at them, laughing uncontrollably. "Your mom. Look at them. They've only known each other for a couple of days and are already getting along so well. They really do have a natural connection." Both of them were aware of the engagement, but out of courtesy, they had never brought it up. Now hearing the two elders teasing about this matter in person, Teresa's face turned slightly red, and she quickly took a sip of cola. Rain remained very composed, politely greeting Auntie and even asking when she would come to the UK. Seeing that he still remembered this, Wendy was surprised and clicked her tongue a few times. "Rain, your mom hasn't even said she's coming yet, and you're already this concerned. It's rare to see you take initiative in these matters. Do you have ulterior motives?" Hearing her mother's suggestive tone, Rain couldn't do anything about it and had to patiently explain. "Teresa said it would be by next month at the latest, so I just asked one more question." Teresa quickly chimed in, taking the initiative to claim responsibility. The two mothers were overjoyed to see them getting along so harmoniously. Before returning the phone, Wendy deliberately brought it up. Your mom. Remember to bring the keepsakes we exchanged back then when you come to London. Who knows? They might come in handy." The four elders on both ends of the call knew these keepsakes were tied to a marriage arrangement, and they all laughed in unison. Only the two young people tacitly pretended not to know. To ease the awkwardness, Teresa quickly moved on to the next topic. "Mom, if you're coming, bring me a few things. I'll send you the list in a couple of days." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Teresa was about to hang up when Teresa's mom stopped her. "Teresa, today is your brother's birthday. Remember to give him a call. By the way, he went to Europe with Mom for his birthday a couple of days ago. You should ask. Maybe he's going to London. It would be nice if you could join him for a meal." Hearing this, Teresa suddenly remembered that in just a few hours, it would be Payne's 24th birthday. Over a month ago, she had been agonizing over what gift to give him. Little did she expect that now, she had completely forgotten about it. But in front of her mother, she still had to play the role of harmonious siblings, nodding in agreement without mentioning that Payne had come looking for her. Waking up, the house was quiet. Rain wasn't around either, having left a note saying she had something to attend to and needed to go out. Teresa didn't think much of it. After finishing breakfast, she returned to her bedroom, turned on her computer, and got ready to study. Just as she finished reading a chapter, the phone on the desk rang. She picked it up and saw it was an unfamiliar international number. After hesitating for a few seconds, she still answered the call, but after saying, "Hello," a few times, there was no response from the other end. Just as she was about to hang up, Payne's deep voice finally came through. "I'm downstairs where you're staying now. Teresa, come out and celebrate my birthday with me." Teresa didn't know why he had found his way here, but based on what she knew of him, she was certain that if she stepped out today, he would try every means to take her away. She didn't want such a thing to happen, so she refused. "You should go celebrate your birthday with Aunt Liang. She hasn't seen you in so long and must miss you terribly." "I won't be coming down. Happy birthday to you." After she finished speaking, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Only the increasingly heavy breathing remained. Teresa knew this was the precursor to his anger. She didn't want to argue with him today, so before he could explode, she hung up and turned off her phone. She stayed in her room all day, completely absorbed in her studies. The next morning, she finally turned on her phone. seeing over 100 missed calls. She remained silent for a long moment before clearing the records. For the better part of the following month, Teresa hardly stepped outside. Only occasionally Samson family dinners would she tag along. Most of the time she studied at home, chatting idly with Rain. Days passed one after another, and soon it was September, the season for school to start. 3 days before school started, Teresa discussed with Aunt Samson about moving into the apartment early. Wendy kept trying to persuade her to stay, but seeing her resolute attitude, had no choice but to agree. The next day, the family of 3 brought luggage that had doubled in size to send her to her new home. At the moment of parting, Rain did not follow them into the car. Looking at the person standing beside her, Teresa had a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Aren't you going back with Uncle and Aunt?" "I'm not going back. I'm about to start school soon too. Actually, I'll be your senior." It wasn't until this moment that Teresa realized Rain was also from Lund University. No wonder he's so familiar with this area. She glanced at the luggage piled on the floor and noticed only hers was there, which surprised her even more. "Aren't you bringing any luggage for school?" Rain raised a finger to point across at her room, keeping it brief. "The apartment you picked happens to be right across from mine." What a coincidence indeed. Teresa couldn't help but sigh with emotion, then immediately thought about being neighbors with him, revealing a bright smile on her face. "Well, it seems I'll have to keep troubling you in the future then." Rain picked up the suitcase, speaking in a rather cheerful tone. "You're welcome, Junior." Hearing this form of address, Teresa felt somewhat displeased. She had only enrolled 1 year later than him, and she was actually a day older than him. How could he call her Junior? If this had happened when they first met, she would have just silently complained to herself. But now the two of them had become so familiar that she immediately retorted, "Don't call me Junior. We're clearly peers. It sounds weird, and I'm actually older than you." Hearing this, Rain glanced at her, his voice carrying a hint of seriousness. Just by a day after school started, the two were practically inseparable except during class. Teresa quickly adapted to her new life, gradually leaving past events behind. Teresa's mom would occasionally call to chat about trivial family matters. She said Payne suddenly announced after returning from Europe that he wanted to cancel his engagement with Vicky. Vicky refused to agree and came to his house several times, but he ignored her. The two remained in a cold war. She said Payne recently had a big fight with Payne's father and was unreasonably demanding to quit the group. Teresa listened silently without expressing any opinion. After all, now the only connection between her and the Quinton family is Teresa's mom. As long as her mother is fine, she doesn't care about whatever happens to the Quinton family. After hanging up the phone, Teresa checked the time and sent a message to Rain, asking what time his class ended. He replied quickly, saying he had a gathering in the afternoon and told her not to wait. Teresa understood, packed her bag, and left the school alone. As she was holding her phone, wondering what to eat, a car suddenly pulled over by the roadside. She looked up at the sound, but before she could see clearly, a strong force grabbed her and dragged her into the car. In an instant, feelings of terror and despair surged over Teresa's heart like a flood. She struggled with all her might, fighting the person restraining her, only to hear a familiar muffled groan. It was Payne. After making a clear judgment, Teresa stopped struggling and spoke coldly. "Payne, what are you doing?" Hearing the anger in her tone, Payne dropped the act and let out a disdainful laugh. "Kidnapping, Teresa, can't you tell? Calling it a kidnapping." He saw the reddened marks on her skin from his grip and finally let go, setting her free. Teresa struggled to sit up, gazing at the scenery rushing past the window, trying to determine her location. The lane was heading toward the sea. Payne wanted to take her away from England. Realizing this, her heart sank, and she frowned as she raised her head. But upon seeing that gaunt face, a hint of surprise flickered in her eyes. How had he become like this in less than a month? Payne also noticed her shocked expression. Those weary eyes, bloodshot and clouded, held a trace of shadow. "What's wrong? Don't recognize your brother. You wouldn't even send me a single message for a whole month. Teresa, how could you be so heartless?" Though his tone remained as casual as ever, Teresa knew it was all deliberately crafted. To be precise, in front of her and her mother, he had always worn the mask of a dissolute playboy, and the person standing before her now was the most genuine Payne. Removed the mask of thoughtfulness and sunshine, exposing all the darkness and madness buried deep within. Laid bare before her, She looked at this unrecognizable person before her and finally couldn't help but ask, "Does it have to be this way?" "Brother." Hearing the term, brother, Payne's smile instantly froze on his face. He raised his hand to grip her chin, as if struggling to control his emotions, his facial muscles twisting into a knot. "Don't call me brother, Teresa. From today onward, I am your husband. I'll take you to Portugal, and we'll get married as we promised before." At this very moment, Teresa finally understood. Payne, he's truly gone mad. Watching the madness surge across his face, she found it utterly incomprehensible and couldn't help but scream out, "I refuse, Payne. I have no desire whatsoever to marry you." Each word was enunciated clearly, resonating with unwavering conviction. Payne's eyes gradually turned cold as he heard these words. He stepped closer, staring straight into her pupils, and retorted word by word, "There's no question of willingness. Teresa, I told you, you can only belong to me." After getting out of the car, Payne led Teresa into a tightly sealed, walled room. Then, he took away all her belongings, locked the door, and left with just one sentence: "Wait here quietly for a few hours. I'll go get your passport, and then we can disappear together." With that, he walked away without waiting for her response. Listening to his fading footsteps, Teresa clenched her fists tightly, pinched herself a few times, and gradually calmed down. She crouched on the ground, recalling all the information she currently knew, trying to find a way to escape. Just as her mind was racing, she suddenly heard another set of footsteps. It was the sound of high heels, not Payne. Teresa quickly stood up and frantically pounded on the door, trying to catch the attention of whoever was outside. The footsteps indeed came to a halt right outside the door. Just as she was about to call for help, she heard a familiar voice. "Teresa, where is he taking you?" "Yes, it's Vicky." Teresa's heart, which had just risen with a glimmer of hope, sank again. After parting at the cemetery, she never saw Vicky again. Since Vicky could track her here, she must have secretly followed Payne, but their engagement has already been called off. Why is she still unwilling to let go? Could it be that she likes him this much? Realizing this, Teresa seemed to have found the only possible way to escape. She took a deep breath and quickly organized her words. "Portugal. He said he would take me there to get married, but I don't want to marry him." Upon hearing this, Vicky let out a cold laugh. "Marriage? He's truly insane. Didn't you like him a lot? Why don't you want to now?" Seeing that she had taken the bait, Teresa quickly spoke the words she had prepared. "He was only with me to get revenge on my mother. After I found out, I decided to leave him and start a new life. I came to England partly to study, and partly because my fiancé is here. I've already decided to get engaged to him at the end of the month, and my mother will be coming too. So I have no intention of staying with him, nor do I want my life to be completely ruined by him." After she finished speaking, the person outside the door fell silent. As time ticked by, Teresa's heartbeat grew faster and faster, but she also knew that haste wouldn't help at this moment, so she could only patiently continue probing. "I heard from my mom that your engagement with Payne has been called off. You know he's a madman, and I'd advise you to stay away from him, or you might end up like me." Before she could finish, Vicky angrily cut her off. "Shut up. I've known Payne for over 20 years, and our affairs are none of your business. If you don't like him, then stay away and stop provoking him." These words hit Teresa right where she wanted, and she quickly feigned an anxious expression. "I want to leave too, but he's gone back to get my passport now. As soon as he returns, he'll take me away from the UK. Can you help me? Contact my fiancé for me. I promise if I can leave today, I'll never appear before Payne again." Outside, it grew quiet once more. This time, Teresa wasn't in such a hurry, because she knew Vicky would definitely agree. And just as she expected, a sound came from outside the door a few minutes later. "Tell me the number." 3 hours later, Payne returned and opened the door. Seeing Teresa sitting obediently in the corner, he was quite satisfied and handed her the water and food he had bought on the way. "Teresa, have something to eat first. I'll take you away from here soon." Teresa lowered her head, looking at the items in the bag, but made no move. She waited until Payne's patience was almost exhausted before raising her hand to take out a bottle of water. Having not eaten all day, she couldn't unscrew the cap and had to hand the water to the person in front of her. This action of hers greatly pleased Payne. He finally smiled, opened the water for her, then patted her head, his tone filled with delight. "Figured it out. Teresa, we're meant for each other. Just stay obediently by my side. As for Mom and Dad, I'll find a way to handle it. Teresa said nothing, giving only a slight nod. Okay. The pain and frustration of the past month were swept away in that single word. Payne was quite pleased and even regained his appetite. Picking up a piece of bread to eat, Teresa took a few sips, then passed the bottle over, reaching out for the backpack to check if any documents were missing. Payne actually believed her words and handed over the bag. Teresa rummaged through the pockets and, while he was drinking water, secretly dropped the ID card into the couch crevice. Then she pretended to rummage through it for a while before handing the bag back. Payne had just finished eating. He checked the time and, seeing it was about right, took Teresa's hand and stood up. The two of them went downstairs one after the other. The original driver had already disappeared without a trace. Teresa got into the passenger seat first and proactively fastened her seatbelt, while Payne was fastening his seatbelt in the driver's seat. She took the backpack and pretended to get something to eat. As soon as he drove the car out of the underground garage, she immediately let out a startled cry, looking at him with a panicked expression. Bro, did you forget to take my ID card? Or did you leave it behind during the check just now? Payne's smile froze instantly as he frowned and looked over. Did you take it? It's gone. Seeing Teresa nod with certainty, a wave of irritation welled up inside him. If it's lost, then it's lost. We'll just reapply for it later. Teresa, her palms were sweating. Her mind raced, and she finally came up with an excuse. But don't you need these identity documents to get married in Portugal? If the paperwork is incomplete, the wedding will have to be postponed. Right. Hearing her mention marriage, Payne, a flicker of urgency flashed in his eyes. He pondered for a moment and finally decided to go upstairs to look. Before leaving, he locked all the car doors and gave an instruction. Teresa, wait for me a few minutes. I'll be right back. Teresa nodded obediently and watched him walk away. After his figure disappeared into the stairwell, a shadowy figure emerged from behind the vehicle. With a loud bang, the window on the right side of the back seat was shattered into pieces. Teresa immediately unbuckled her seatbelt, grabbed her bag, and leaped out of the back seat. She looked at Vicky holding the iron rod and sincerely thanked her. Vicky, however, had little patience and casually pointed in a direction. I've told your fiancé the address. Whether he comes or not, I don't know. Go see for yourself. Looking at the half-open door, Teresa hesitated no longer and ran toward it with all her might. Chapter 26. Just as she ran out the door, Teresa saw a black car speeding toward her from the distance. She recognized it as Rain's car and waved frantically. Moments later, the car stopped beside her. Without a second thought, she got in. Hurry up. At her urging, Rain immediately stepped on the gas. Teresa stared at the rearview mirror, and only relaxed when she saw no one was following. Having remained silent, Rain finally spoke up to ask for the reason once he saw her relax. Who was that calling me? Why did you come all the way out here? Teresa was about to explain when she heard a sharp, urgent honk. She turned abruptly and saw Payne driving like mad, chasing after them. Without another word of explanation, she turned to Rain, her voice laced with concern. Can we lose that car behind us? Rain accelerated, his tone becoming much more serious. Your brother. Teresa didn't expect him to guess it so quickly and nodded silently. Everything was understood without words. After getting the answer, Rain accelerated a bit more, but the car behind seemed to be driving as if life didn't matter. With the pedal to the metal, the distance between the two cars was closing rapidly, soon narrowing to just 20 meters. Through the rear window, Teresa could even see Payne's face twisted with a look of frenzied rage. Her heart pounded wildly, almost leaping out of her chest. She stared unblinkingly at the rear, watching as the distance shrank from 20 meters to 15. When the distance narrowed to 10 meters, she realized that everything wouldn't end just because she had fled. So she decided to call a halt. Rain, stop. Before the word, car, could escape her lips, it was swallowed by Teresa's mouth. Her eyes suddenly widened, filled with a look of terror and unease. 10 meters away, sitting in the passenger seat, Vicky had an emotional breakdown and grabbed at the steering wheel. The entire vehicle spiraled out of control, made a sharp left turn after braking suddenly, and then plunged straight through the guardrail, falling into the boundless depths of the sea. Vicky and Payne's lives were saved. They just became vegetative and were admitted to the intensive care unit. No one knows when they will wake up. Rain's dash cam clearly recorded the entire process of the car accident. The Quintons and the Song family became enemies because of this ill-fated marriage alliance. Throughout the entire incident, Teresa never voiced any opinion. Everyone assumed she had been psychologically traumatized from witnessing the tragedy. But only she knew that her silence was merely to conceal her affair with Payne. She admitted she was a selfish person. But what's wrong with being selfish? She just didn't want her mother to suffer another blow because of her. Besides, whether these things were spoken or not wouldn't have any impact on the nature of this car accident. The days passed by one after another. The person lying on the hospital bed still showed no signs of waking up. 2 years later, Teresa graduated from the University of London. On the day of graduation, Teresa's mom specially flew over to present her with a bouquet of flowers. She smiled and took it, pulling her mother along to take photos everywhere. Rain followed behind with the camera, capturing each of these beautiful moments. Teresa held her mother's hand and flashed a peace sign at the camera, the ring on her ring finger shining brilliantly in the shot. After taking the photos, Teresa walked over to Rain with the flowers, ready to check her apprentice's photography skills. With just one glance, she raised her eyebrows. "You should place the portrait in the center of the frame. How come you still can't get it right? Rain just started learning. How could he be as good as you? Teresa, you need to be more patient. It's my fault for not taking it well. Let's try another one." The warm sunlight bathed the three figures, casting layers of light and shadow on their smiling faces. And this moment was merely one among countless warm, natural, and happy days that would follow in their lives. The most ordinary and commonplace of moments.